Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's another big day here at PAC 14. We've got one of my favorite community people here. She's really devoted her life to this community. I can't believe it. Maureen McNeill, welcome.
Wow, thank you.
It's true.
Thank you. It's a good community. Why wouldn't I? It's a great place.
Let's talk about that. Why is it a good community?
Oh my goodness.
Because a lot of us don't believe in it sometimes.
Well, and honestly, in some ways, this is not so much my tribe politically, but no, these are folks that help each other. I mean, from my earliest days here, when Avery Hall was the guy who would, I think I interviewed him and he sent my husband and me to dinner at Johnny's and Sammy's. These are just really open-hearted, good folk. And now we've sort of advanced it into Jake Day and cleaning up downtown and doing great things downtown. No, I think this is it's been a great community to have kids in, raise a family in.
Well, I'm glad you did this because I can make it all about me. You know, I had a paradigm shift when my career changed.
Right.
And I was in the wilderness for about a year. And all the nonprofit stuff that I used to get pulled into, I would roll my eyes and, another nonprofit, and take a picture of someone with a check, and and I just was like, don't these people have lives? Why do we have to go to the Village of Hope and clean up on the weekend? Can't we go to Washington and drink? And I would think like that, and then something happened, and now I got shot with the spores or whatever, and I get it. Well, and I'm so impressed with what we have here in terms of nonprofits and people giving back. It's
really, really remarkable. And I started in something like what you're doing now, right? My first job here was the Salisbury News and Advertiser, which died and has been reborn beautifully as the Salisbury Independent.
Thank you.
And it has that same feeling of, what are we doing well here? What can we celebrate here? We took on some stuff, you take on some stuff, but it was still also about just shining a light on what was going well and happy in the community.
When I get a photo or whatever it is, and I can type that little headline above the photo, like giving back, I'm like, these people are giving back.
And so I was lucky enough to be here to see Frank Perdue do that, Dick Henson do that, and believe that was, you made your living here, that's what you do. You give back, and in many, many ways. And we talked to Dirk Whittison, chairs the capital campaign for Coastal Hospice, or co-chairs it, and he remembers Avery Hall just calling up his buddies and saying, "Okay, I'm in for this much. How about you?" And they would get things done. And it's shifted from that a little bit because more of us are knocking on doors asking for money, but it's still that kind of generous, supportive community. It's wonderful.
I remember as a young reporter, and I just remember thinking the guy was dumb, but now I get it.
Well, because you were young and you knew everything, right?
Well, we had a little thing in the paper. I think it was not Village of Hope, but it was Sister Mary Elizabeth needed like $3,000 for blankets, something like that. And this was like 1987. So there's a little thing in the Sunday paper, and my phone rang, and it was Frank Hanna, the restaurateur. And he's like, I read this thing in the paper, and I want to get a check over to Sister Mary Elizabeth. Can you come pick it up? And I'm like, no. No, that's not what I do.
But isn't that great?
But he was like in the car going to a Colts game. I'm like, Mr. Rich Guy's got a car phone going to the Colts game, and he wants me to come pick up a check. I'm like, how dare he? That's how dumb I was.
Oh, yeah, but
rather than understanding the beauty of the newspaper connected this problem to him, and he was going to solve it, and people are going to benefit with blankets in the middle of the winter. I was just like, how dare you call me on a Sunday morning?
Well, and so the flip side of that is now we put on Facebook that we need blankets for our patients, and if we could have patriotic ones, we give them to the veterans.
Right.
That Facebook post, our Facebook posts for Coastal Hospice get about 100, maybe 100 hits, 1,200.
Wow.
For shares, hits, all of that. And we are still kind of buried in blankets. They go right out the door. It's all good. But
no, we haven't introduced who you are in terms of Coastal Hospice. So Maureen is the development director for Coastal Hospice.
Right, and have been for 10 years.
What, 10 years?
10 years,
Wow.
yeah, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, and worked in news before that, so.
But Coastal Hospice is one nonprofit that no one can figure out anything negative to say about it. It's just the
Thank
most
you.
amazing thing. I've had 3 deep encounters with Coastal Hospice and just came out of it like just completely moved by all that experience.
And it's, the wonderful thing for me is that when somebody comes back around having been through, so hospice is end of life care, right? And so ideally it's people with 6 months prognosis. That's the way Medicare set it up. But, and it is this team of people that come in and support the patient and the family, and the idea is to put the patient's goals first before everything else. There are occasions when people get upset about the fact that they didn't know, nobody told them this person was getting ready to die, and somehow we didn't have them long enough to help them through that. And so people do threaten to sue and say horrible things to us individually. And when my boss, Elaine Capon, hears that, what she hears in that is, that's grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's been the lesson there for me, is that the first answer isn't defensive, how dare they? It's, this is somebody's pain, and we need
It's
to
somewhere
make
there
sure
in Kubler-Ross. It's one of the...
yeah, right. It's somewhere
Yeah.
in those. So
Yeah.
and they've hit the anger phase, and they're holding on to it for all that it's worth. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that there's the recognition that yes, this is a scary moment for us, but it's coming out of so much pain and fear that we need to make sure we are addressing that and have addressed that, and then we never have gone to court or anything like that. It's just,
Yeah.
but people respond badly to that moment, and we're there.
My father's cancer took about 1.5 years for him to finally go. And the tragic and great thing was that hospice got him prepared completely.
Isn't that amazing?
But then the cancer got in his brain. He forgot
Oh.
everything that he had learned before. So there was like 2 different
Yeah.
exits.
Yeah.
But he caught up at the end, and he got it at the end, I think.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see a short-term exit and a long-term exit all in one exit.
Yeah, and so the folks that I work with deal with that. I mean, and it's remarkable the way they sort of recognize where people are and sort of help them through that. And again, it's if we're there early enough to have the relationship, they can do these amazing things with the family, and that's who they're there for. And then they hold on to the family for at least a year beyond that. So yeah, it's pretty remarkable stuff that we do. They do.
The people in the organization fascinate me because I don't know how they're wired.
So my lame joke is, if you want to stop a conversation at a party, tell people you work for hospice, because they're like, oh, well. But actually, the other thing that comes from that is somebody's story about how, like yours, about how surprising the experience was and how helpful the folks at Coastal Hospice were. What they will tell you is, yes, they get exhausted. We do a lot of grief support for our own staff and a lot of spiritual support for our own staff. Probably could do more. But what they also tell you is the privilege of being part of that and getting to know these folks at this incredibly important moment, sacred moment, is just beyond fulfilling.
Yeah.
They do ultimately burn out. We have a nurse that's been with us forever who's actually led a team who's retired. I think yesterday was her last day. And I think she'll miss it, but she's also you do sort of reach a point of just fatigue. And she reached that point, and that's happened with a couple of folks. But we've had others that there's a nurse, an aide who worked her career with us, 30-some years, and it's that sacred moment. It's that privilege of walking that path with somebody, supporting that family through that. If it happens in the world, it happens to our folks. So drug diversion happens. I mean, every startling, frightening thing that happens in the world probably also happens in the families of the people we deal with.
Right.
And so there's a lot of work to prepare people to deal with all that and to support them through all that, and a lot of relationships in the community that's helped that. But it really just is remarkable that these folks come back every day for more and are just brilliant at it.
The facility, Coastal Hospice at the Lake,
Yeah.
when you think about what it is, where people go to die.
Oh, that's not what it is.
Well,
okay.
I mean, the public thinks that.
I know they do.
So, I mean, when I walked in there the first time, I was like, all right, this is what we're here for.
And see, not everybody recognizes that. But yeah, that's hospice. You're there because that's where you're headed.
Right.
Yeah.
But you would think it would be like a downer, but it's beautiful and it's staffed so well. And the thing I'll never forget, and I'll start to cry doing this, when my grandmother was in there, there was some need late at night, and I went to the little office window. And in the office, there's 2 nurses in there, and they've pulled a patient in there. And she's sort of propped up right there by where they're working. And I was like, why is there a patient in the office?
Right.
And the woman said, we didn't want her to die by herself. They pulled her out of her room and had her there in the office with them. And I was like, like, what do you say to that? And then, because there is a God, 2 days later, I'm reading the newspaper, and there is her obituary. And she was this tremendous teacher from Mardella and had all these fans and just this amazing human being, you know, who
Right.
and I was like, I was so glad that I saw that and saw how they treated her in her last moments. And she was one of those people, like, family, she didn't have family. She was completely
Right.
devoted to her job. She'd never married. There was no one to be there with her. But
And so these folks
these nurses pulled her because they didn't want to go in. They wanted to be, and I was just
Yeah.
like, this is something very special is going on here.
And so certainly the people that, especially the nurses, social workers, the aides, all of them, chaplains, group
Yeah.
support, it's a pretty self-selecting thing. You don't go into it as a career not knowing that that's what's going on. But yeah, then you learn a ton. Yeah, there are all these opportunities for personal growth when you're there. We have at Coast Hospice at the Lake, my colleagues brought in a birthday cake in celebration for a patient who was in that same situation.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing a team leader coordinating getting medication to a patient, meeting him under the bridge where they normally meet him because he was homeless. And his choice was not to come indoors and to come to Coast Hospice at the Lake where we would have cared for him. But that was not what he wanted.
Right.
So my colleagues met him under the bridge and got him
Wow.
his meds and got him his care. It was so that, I guess he had a cell phone, must have had, but just this, it's all about what they want and being guided by that, and it is remarkable, and it isn't the thing that everybody who gives in the community finds it in their heart to support. But those that do, you get these great relationships and these great conversations going.
At the end of that, I think I called you and I said,
Yeah.
I'll give you everything in my bank account.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the most amazing thing I've ever been
really,
through.
It's stunning. It is.
And even like, because you're there for a long time, and there's the plaques on the walls with people who've given money. And, I would see names of people I knew, and I felt differently about them. I just had this, I just like, wow, way to go, Dr. Greg Thompson.
Yeah. And actually, so I had a similar experience and wrote to, actually to the Henson Foundation and said, seeing Mr. Henson's picture out, that was just this moment of, and we also are building Coast Hospice at the Ocean in Berlin and more in Ocean Pines, I guess. And what I tell people is that feeling of knowing that the community is supporting them at that moment. So when you're walking again, you're walking in the patient room and you see Ray and Susan Shockley's name outside the door, I have to believe that there's that feeling that, wow, I am loved here.
Yeah.
Which is just, and again, so we're back to what's wonderful about this community.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The home care is really important too. I mean, there's the facility, but the home care is probably the bigger.
And that's 90% of our patients,
Right.
more than 90% of our patients in the home. And I have
And
to
that's
interject.
incredible.
So Coast Hospice at the Lake is a place to go to manage symptoms, and very often those needs arise at the very end.
Right.
But
Or a respite situation.
Right, or respite. And there are patients though that get managed and get sent home again.
Right.
Or they need to be there to get stabilized before they're settled in at home. And there is that sense of just the number of things that we can provide because we get community support. The hearing aid battery, insurance isn't going to cover that anymore. The ramp outside, the hospital bed in the home, which insurance does cover. I mean, all of these things that it's what does the patient need and how can we get it there? And it's never about what our needs are and what our priorities are. We have them as an organization, of course, but it's always the team, everyone is guided by what's the best thing for the patient.
Right. Well, for my dad, it was the people coming in, the volunteers coming in
the home. Yeah.
And he would be settled, and the volunteer would come and say, well, we're going to get a shower today. And I'd be like, no, we're not.
Right.
he's fine. No, we're going to get a shower today. And he would talk for 4 days about his shower.
See, yeah.
Because they knew what he needed, and I didn't know what he needed.
And so very often we also, the role is to help the family understand what they need and help them understand how to meet those needs and feel more confident about managing pain, about meeting the other needs. But But there's this safety net there. These folks that'll be there every day if that's when you need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My father was not the most racially sensitive person.
Yeah, that
So to see
happens.
him at the end holding hands with a black man reading the Bible,
Oh,
how does that happen?
yeah, yeah.
You
So
know?
we all have our moments for personal growth. That's
Yeah.
fabulous. That's really nice
Even
to
growing at
hear.
the very end.
Yeah, so mostly at the very end,
Yeah.
really. I mean, that there is that opportunity at the very end, and so there are a bunch of things that we do, life review and things like that with patients to sort of make sure you don't miss that opportunity. If we were with you long enough to be able to do these things. There's a woman, so I'm leaving, but I got to do an interview with a patient because of the way things fell together. And she is this woman who lives in Hebron, and she has joined a group of people who paint stones with like a pretty flower or a message, and she has painted all of her life. And probably holding a paintbrush physically is not the best thing for her because at the end she has to, with her other hand, remove the brush. Her hand is so partly arthritic that
Wow.
it's,
Yeah.
but while she's painting, she's so focused on what she's doing that she doesn't feel any of the other pain. So we're all about making sure she has enough rocks and
Wow.
paints and yeah. And so
Wow.
it's just, and she has this very clear sense of what's next for her and where she's, how she's doing and what she wants to do before she gets there. And we can help with that, which is just remarkable.
The other cool element is the follow-up with the families. The person's
Yeah,
gone,
yeah.
but hospice called me every week for a year. Like, you
Oh,
want to talk
yeah.
about anything?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm a blabbermouth. I'm talking to everyone I can talk to about this, obviously, as I am with you.
And you need to, yeah.
Yeah, but I felt like they cared.
Well, they do, absolutely they do. So we're actually required to provide that.
Okay.
We're not reimbursed for it, but we're required to do
Right.
that. But that's kind of the wisdom of what hospice is about, is what hospice has always been about, which is that it's not, and it's not just about the patient because the patient isn't the only one going through all of this pain.
Right.
So it's also caring for the family and making sure they're managing their grief. And we've had, I got a call one day from a woman who said, "Can I refer my friend to your grief support group? Because you don't have to have been affiliated with Coast Hospice to show up for a grief support group." And in some communities, more than half the people in the room never knew us before. We didn't. It's not one of our patients that they're mourning, but we've heard from folks who are mourning a pet.
Wow.
And if that's been a real part of your support system in your family, especially if you've lived alone and
Right.
yeah, you need that support. The other thing we have, by the way, is this summer camp, Camp Safe Harbor, which is, we do it in concert with Salisbury University, the social work program. The students are studying children in grief in a summer program, and then we have a 3-day camp. So there's a Monday and a Friday that's sort of the on-ramp and the off-ramp. And in those 3 days, the kids that come to camp who are from anywhere in the community but have had a sort of an intimate loss of somebody they depended on, the students from Salisbury University come up with an activity and do it with the kids so they get that experience of leading an activity with kids. And then our volunteer social workers, grief counselors are all around this, sort of helping it move forward. It's just remarkable. And so what parents learn is that's grief, that's 13.
Right.
That kind of, so, and it isn't that you respond by a parent any differently, but maybe you worry differently or regard it differently. And so the parents get some support understanding it.
And the coverage on that each year, these kids have been through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of these have been through more than your average, loss of a grandparent. Some of them, that's what it is, and they're welcome there and we can help them.
Right.
But some of it's really pretty traumatic stuff. And you can't do it all in a week, but you can at least get them feeling like they're not the only ones trying to do this thing, and that coping is something they can learn to do. And the families see coping as something they can learn to do. And it's just, again, it's my colleagues recognizing that there was a need that they could meet. And it isn't something we bill for. It isn't. We get grant support and event support and do that thing.
Right.
It's pretty
Now,
remarkable.
We just had in the paper, you're in charge of the fundraising, basically. You had your
Hats
hospice
for
hats,
for
which is
hospice, yeah.
fun. It's a fun thing.
It's a fun party, yeah. And we, so the big fundraiser event of that was decorating hats. We did a peer-to-peer element so that, vote for my hat by making a donation to Coastal Hospice. Vernon Powell
Right.
gave us the hats, displayed the hats, and we raised 10,000 just on people voting for hats.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, there's the element of the community being generous. There's also the element of decorators being competitive and wanting to win this thing.
Right.
And the prize was, I think, a bottle of wine. But yeah, it was pretty great, and
But it's a
it's just
fun
a fun
event.
party.
People dress up, and
People dress up,
it's
wear
fun.
fancy hats. We honor that's when we present our Anchor Award for somebody who's just been a great advocate for Coastal Hospice. This year was Norm Conway, who's just done so much for us over the
Right.
years. So yeah, it's a fun party. It's a lot of fun.
And your fundraisers, a lot of the nonprofits I sort of dread having to go to the fundraisers. I never get invited to any of yours because they're all sold out.
So that one wasn't sold out. We would have had room
Oh,
for
you would have had
We
me?
would have
Okay,
had room
I
for you.
would have been room for me that day.
But yeah, you should have come. But I don't know why you didn't. But
There's a lot going on. It was a big,
yeah,
it was a big
that was
day.
a huge. Yeah, why everybody has to
I
take
think
our
I said
day?
it was the airport thing, yeah.
Yeah, there was a ton. But some people made it both. I'm just saying.
And there was the United Way thing.
United Way, yeah. But at any rate, we have these. For most of our fundraisers, a lot of what we do with the fundraisers is donated also, like Burn and Pout with the hats. It's just, again, this super supportive community. We try not to do too many because we don't want to be asking you for money every day, but with the Capital Campaign, we've had a couple affiliated with that may even continue to support Coast Hospice at the Ocean. So those will go on, but we have a couple, 2, 3 fundraisers every year.
What's the next one?
The next one is Blues on the Bay.
Right, that's a good one.
At
Right.
Mackey's. Oh, that's a great party.
Yeah.
And again, Mackey is.
The Sassers have been great contributors to Coastal Hospice forever.
Mackey and Pam Stansel are
Yeah.
awesome.
Stansel, I'm sorry.
Stansel, that's right.
Mackie Sasser, Mackie Stansel, yeah.
They are just the warmest, kindest people, and they open up. It's a night when the restaurant wouldn't otherwise have. Although people show up and say you're open, it looks like you're busy.
Right.
We say sorry, it's a party, but you're welcome to buy a ticket. He serves fabulous hors d'oeuvres, great music, and our bills are for printing and mailing invitations. He does all the rest, that's unheard of in fundraising, honestly.
That's another one that I don't ever get invited to. So
We'll put you on the list. Okay.
What's the date?
I don't know yet. We have to ask Mackie what the date is.
Okay.
It'll be in September. It'll
Okay.
be near the end of September. But we get the date from him.
But it's a fun one.
Oh, it's a blast. Now we do. So we do make a couple of speeches and ask people to give to Coast Hospice at the Ocean. And when we do that, we actually, because it's a bar, walk around with little quiet please signs like a golf tournament. I mean, that's where we got the idea. But we take like 15, 20 minutes of talking, and then we get back to music and dancing and fun.
Right.
And it is a blast. I mean, that place is a blast. So how could you not have fun?
And the Place at the Ocean is your big focus right now.
That's our big focus. We have. It's going to turn out to have been about an $8 million project because we're building the whole thing at once. We originally were going to build 6 patient rooms with a plan to add 6 more. As we got the opportunity to buy this building, the Point Clubhouse building, which we purchased at the end of the year, waterfront property, it's gorgeous.
Right there at Ocean Pines.
Right there at Ocean Pines at the end of Ocean Parkway. We had the opportunity to build that and then looked again at the numbers and said, if we build 12 patient rooms, there's some economies of scale that this thing will be able to pay for itself. That and the thrift shop and our fundraisers, this thing will carry its own weight and not be a drain on Coastal Hospice, which hospice residents often are. So we're building the whole thing, which means we need to get certification from the state to get permission to do it. But we're working on that right now. So we hope to break ground end of the calendar year. We'd hoped to do this sooner and then got the numbers back in and realized what it was going to cost and said, why are we doing part of the project? Let's do the whole thing at once. So we will open a 12-patient room hospice residence and outreach center next year.
Wow.
That will, a little news flash for you, have Mackie Stensel's name on it.
Oh, good.
Mackie and Pam's, because they've been just these amazing donors to us. So, yeah.
That's good. In terms of culture nationwide, people are starting to understand hospice better.
Americans still, I think, don't realize that we die.
I mean, we're still taking grandma, 95 years old, and getting her surgery.
Right,
first.
and we still don't accept that we die and all that. But yeah, there is more education, or more physicians are learning about hospice and palliative care.
Dr. Gittleman, Mitch Gittleman, was the first one to turn me on to it. Because he wanted to talk so much about patients that they would try to treat when there was just no need to treat them anymore.
And he understands that this is another therapy.
Yeah.
That this is a therapy for what the patient needs now, and that will be effective in quality of life. Yeah.
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 But I never understood it. I would have been like, we must do everything to save,
Do not go gently into that good night. Yeah. And actually, gently is a pretty great way to go. So there is more understanding. We brought a palliative care specialist here, like a nationally known guy, in 2015 to talk to physicians, talk to clinicians. And what we heard from social workers and nurses was, We wish physicians felt more comfortable letting people know that their best options might not be curative treatment. I think we're reaching a point as medical care, medical school, that we'll get there. But we're still over-treating. There are studies that compare cancer patients who have hospice and cancer patients who have curative care. The hospice ones can live longer. If anybody lives longer, it's the hospice patients that live longer. And if you look at anything like quality of life measures, they live longer. We did a study in Wycomico County of just the last 6 months of cancer patients' lives. And when I say we, I mean the palliative care team with Peninsula Regional and Salisbury University and our folks. And the patients who had hospice the patients who did not have hospice, more than 50% spent their last moments in a hospital bed. 2% of the hospice patients that happened with, because people still do want to do that thing. But by and large, when they have hospice, they get enough care to recognize that home is probably better. You can manage just as well at home. So it is just this much more comfortable, much less costly by every measure, by personal angst, by emotional trauma, and expense, to just manage symptoms when curative really isn't doing anybody any good.
Yeah, my father at the end went to the Mexican cancer clinic and
I've known people,
gave them $600,000. Came back, he's cured. It's a miracle. I'm cured. So, but like the last 2 years of his life, more than half of the 2 years was spent. We're going to beat this thing. There was no conversation about anything other than we're going to beat this thing. And then finally, when we couldn't beat it anymore, we had real conversations.
See, yeah.
And if he had died somewhere in the middle of we're going to beat this thing, that's how it would have ended. There never would have been, things wouldn't have been closed up. There wouldn't have been the closure.
And the thing that solidified, I was visiting someone in an ICU unit, not on the Eastern Shore, and I happened to be able to see across to a family that was saying goodbye to grandma. And because she was in the ICU and not in a hospice, and not a coast hospice at the lake or in her home, everybody put on gowns, masks, and gloves, and it broke my heart to just see that happen.
There's high drama, and
it just breaks your heart. Well, I mean, everybody gets to make their own choices. Maybe for that patient, it was what everybody agreed was the best thing. I don't want to judge them, but it broke my heart to see it, because I just thought that's not what I want, and that's not what I want for the people that I love. So, yeah, for your dad to be able to say, these are the things I want to make sure you know. These are the conversations we want to have.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, and you don't get there without recognizing that that's what's coming, which, by the way, is coming for all of us. But yeah.
I've known you 30 years.
Yeah, which means we were 12, right?
You worked for the Sun, the Salisbury News and Advertiser. You worked at WBOC for a long time.
Worked for Maryland Public Television a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Salisbury University.
You were at Salisbury University for a long time. In every role, making the community better.
Oh, that's kind of you.
It's true.
That's kind of you. You want to be able to do work that you're proud of and that you say what I do matters. So.
And now I hear you're leaving?
I am. I'm going back to my roots. I'm from Montgomery County. I'm going back there. I'm going to be fundraising for a nonprofit, but it's only theater.
That's fun.
So
there's nothing like only theater and then only ale house. I mean, that's a fun night.
Right?
That's a fun night.
And they do some pretty great productions. The Washington Post tends to love them. So
excellent.
Yay.
Yeah.
But what I realized, we had a big meeting where we were talking about how to talk about Coast Hospice at the Ocean, and what I realized talking to Mackie was it's been a privilege advocating for hospice. It's going to be fun talking about theater.
Yeah.
And I do have fun talking about hospice. I don't mean to misrepresent that, but talking about theater, I subscribe to the Folger in DC, and I'm up there 3 times a year. I was there last weekend seeing a play. I'm a theater nerd, not lover, so this is it feels like the right thing to do. So yeah, I'm leaving at the end of June. So, and anybody wants to buy a house or twin beds or books, downsizing. So yeah, and thank you for the kind words. No,
and you raised 2 great kids here, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you. That's kind of you. Thank you. Thank you. I will miss. This is where I've had my safety net. Yeah. This has been a great place.
All right.
Thank you.
Give us a last hospice pitch. If I want to send money, what do I do?
Thank you. Coastalhospice.org. There's a donate button, or you can mail a check to Post Office Box 1733, Salisbury, Maryland 28802-1733. Thank you. Yes.
Just memorized that today, I can tell. She's Maureen McNeill. She's the development director at Coastal Hospice, and she's been our guest today on 101.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.